Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another virtual storytelling. I hope you've had a really great week. I hope you are safe and healthy and enjoying your school, however you're doing it, and enjoying your family. And I hope you take time every day to think of something that you are so grateful to have in your life. Now, this is kind of a strange angle this week because today's story takes place in the desert. So many important and wonderful things happened with the people of God in the desert. I want you to be able to see everything. So today, here is our little piece of the desert. Make sure you can see it. Desert is a dangerous place. It's always changing, so it's easy to lose your way. It's hot in the daytime and cold at night. There is not much water in the desert. So you can't find anything to drink. You can't find much to drink, and we need water. Can't find much food in the desert either. And when the wind blows, the sand can sting your skin. So people that are in the desert usually wear clothes to protect themselves from the heat and the stinging sand. After the flood was over, the creatures spread out in all four directions to fill the earth with life again. Many times they gathered by rivers. People settled in small towns, and then villages, and then cities, also by the river. One of the ancient and great cities was called Ur. Another was Haran. In the city of Ur, the people believed in many gods. There was a god for every flower and every rock. There was a god for the sky and the sea and the river and the land. There were so many gods, it was alive with gods in the city. But there was one family who believed that all of God was everywhere. They didn't know this was true, but that is what they believed. Abram and Sarai were part of that family. When it came time for them to move to a new place, they weren't sure God would be there, and they wondered what the new place would be like. They packed everything up and went on a journey to Haran. The whole family went. They took the sheep and the donkeys and all the helpers, the old people and the children. At night, they slept in tents. By day, they followed the Euphrates River. It showed them the way to go and it gave them water to drink and feed the animals. It was a long journey. When they started seeing people coming toward them on the road from Haran, they knew they were getting close. And then they were there. Abram liked to go out at night and stand on the edge of the desert and look at the skies overhead, the desert out there. And here he felt God come close to him. And he felt so close to God, he knew what God was saying to him. He said, I will make of you a great family. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing. God wanted Abram to find another new home. So Abram and Sarai did as God asked, and they went west from Haran towards Canaan. This time they had no river to follow. They came to Shechem. Abram went up a hill to pray, and he felt God's presence there. So he built an altar to mark the place. Next they came to Bethel. They prayed there too. And Abram knew that God was there. So he built another altar to mark this place. Now Abram knew that God was not just here or here or here. He knew that God, all of God, was everywhere. Abram and Sarai and the part of the family that had come with them, not everyone came, finally came to Hebron. And here they made their home near the oaks of Mamre. One night, God called Abram into the edge of the desert, and he came so close to tell Abram, I will make you the father of a great family, and Sarai will be the mother. Abram laughed. They were very old. This promise seemed impossible. But God said to change their name anyway. So Abram would be called Abraham, the father of many, and Sarai would be named Sarah. One time, 3 riders came out of the desert. Abram was sitting outside the tent and he invited them in. Sarah used 3 measures of bread to make them, 3 measures of flour to make their bread. That's a lot of flour. she gave them bread and meat and milk and water, as was the custom. And the three strangers told them that they were going to have a son. And Sarah just laughed. "We are so old." And the riders went on their way. And you know what happened? Abraham and Sarah had a son. And they laughed and laughed and laughed. Couldn't believe it. They even named him Isaac, which means laughter in their language. And when Isaac was grown, Sarah, who was full of years, old and tired, died. And they buried her in a cave near the Oaks of Mamre. Now Abraham was lonely and old, but he knew there was one more thing he needed to do. So he sent his best helper back to Hebron, where his family was, the ones that didn't come with him, to find a wife for Isaac. The helper stopped at a well, and there he met a young woman named Rebecca. Rebecca helped him get a drink of water and watered his animals, and she invited him to come meet her family. There he told them all about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and the great family. And Rebecca decided she wanted to be part of that family. So they set off through the desert, past Shechem, past Bethel. And when they were getting close, Isaac came to meet her. And it wasn't long after that Isaac and Rebecca were married. And then Abraham, who was now so full of years, died. And they buried him in the cave with Sarah by the Oaks of Mamre. Well, Isaac and Rebecca had children, and they grew up and had children, and then they grew up and had children, and this went on for generations until your grandparents were born. And then your grandparents grew up and had your parents, and then your parents grew up and they had you. And now you are part of the great family. And we all are as many as the grains of sand in the desert and the stars in the sky. Now, I wonder what part of this story you liked best. I wonder what part of this story is most important. I wonder if you see yourself in this story. Where are you in this? And I wonder, is there anything in this story that we could take out and still have all the story we need? I hope you take some time to talk about this story with your family. And now I'm going to put the pieces away. Rebecca and Isaac. The altars to remind us that all of God is everywhere. The ancient cities of Hebron and Ur, the Euphrates River, the Tigris River, and, of course, Abram and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah. And our desert box. This is a book about a family that moves, kind of like the family we just read about. It is called The Quilt Story. The story is by Tony Johnston and Tommy DePaula. A little girl's mother made the quilt to keep her warm. When the snows came down long ago, she stitched the quilt by a yellow flame, humming all the time. She stitched the tails of falling stars, and she stitched the name Abigail. Abigail loved the quilt. She wrapped it around her in the quiet dark and watched the winter skies, and sometimes she saw a falling star. Sometimes Abigail played in the woods near her home. She had tea, and her dolls had tea, and the quilt had tea all over it. Sometimes she pretended the quilt was a gown. She wore it to town on her horse, clip-clop, clip-clop, and it tore. So her mother sewed it up once more. Sometimes she played hide and seek with her sisters. She laughed and cried, "Don't peek," and hid under the quilt. And everyone found her. Sometimes Abigail was sick. She sneezed and sneezed. Then she slept under the quilt and she felt better. One day, Abigail's family moved away across wide rivers and over a rock-hard trail. The quilt went too, not stuffed in trunks with the blankets and clothes. It kept the little girls warm from the cold winds, warm from the rain, warm from the sparkling nights. They built a new house in the woods. Abigail's father built it with his hatchet, chop, 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 chop. He built her a new bed, chop, chop, chop. He made her a new horse, too. He worked until curly shavings covered the floor, and everyone sneezed and said, "Welcome home," and was glad. And Abigail felt sad. New home, new horse, new bed. Everything smelled of fresh chops and chips. Everything but her quilt. So her mother rocked her, as mothers do, then tucked her up. And Abigail felt at home again under the quilt. One day, when the quilt was very old and very loved, Abigail folded it carefully and put it in the attic. Everyone forgot it was there. A gray mouse came and loved the quilt, and her babies were born on top of it. They grew fat and gray in the warm stuffing. When they got hungry, they ate a falling star. A raccoon came and loved the quilt. She dug a hole in a corner with her black paws and hid an apple there. A cat came and loved the quilt. A patchwork cat that rolled on the stars and stuffing spilled out like snow. Then the cat curled up in the snow and purred. "Kitty, kitty," called the little girl. She found her cat and she found the quilt, splashed with patterns of sun. The little girl wrapped the quilt around her and she loved it too. "Can you make it like new?" she asked her mother. So her mother stitched, patched, and pushed fresh stuffing in. She stitched long tails on the stars to swish across the quilt again. One day the little girl's family moved away across miles and miles of pavement and smoking, snaking gray highways. They found a new house, freshly cleaned, freshly waxed, freshly painted white. They unpacked and unpacked all night, and everyone sneezed on cardboard dust and said, "Welcome home," and was glad. And the little girl felt sad. Everything smelled of white paint and boxes. Everything but the quilt. So her mother rocked her, as mothers do, then tucked her in. She felt at home again under the quilt. And I'm going to sign off now. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I know Miss Cretia will probably have another one of her beautiful prayers to end our day. Bye.
Thank you, Catherine, for that excellent story. So I thought that we could end with prayer from the Prophet Muhammad, just to remind us that people of the Muslim faith are also part of the great family. They are descendants of Abraham. What actions are most excellent? To gladden the heart of a human being, to feed the hungry, to help the afflicted, to lighten the sorrow of the sorrowful, to remove the wrongs of the injured. That person is the most beloved of God, who does the most good to God's creatures. Amen. I hope you have the opportunity to do lots of good for God's creatures this week. We'll see you again next week. Thanks so much. Bye.